Now, because we do try to be international, we have speakers coming up from the United States, from Canada, but now we're going to move to Hungary. And Agnes Molnar is based in Budapest, and she's going to talk a bit about a project where a lot of it's about information quality. It's all right about all this technology, but Agnes is just as interested in information quality as she is about the nuts and bolts of the technology that goes on top. So Agnes, welcome all the way from Budapest. I don't know what the weather's like with you, but it's fairly grey in London. And here they're ready to hear what you have to say about information quality. And you've just got, 3 days to talk about it.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin. My name is Agnes Molar, and I live in Budapest, Hungary, and I run a company called Search Explained. Our focus is on enterprise search, mostly using Microsoft technologies. But in the last 10 plus years, I found that for enterprise search, there are so many things that have to fit together. And one of them is the information quality, the information architecture, and the metadata that we have or that we do not have on the content. So it's always a complex thing when it comes to implementation. I've been working with Microsoft technologies and search for over 15 years. I am a Microsoft Regional Director. I am a Microsoft MVP. I'm also a founding member of the Search Network, similar to Martin and Charlie and others in this group. And I am also a member of other professional groups about search and knowledge management around the world. And today I'm going to show you a case study that we have been working on recently to demonstrate the complexity of information quality and information architecture and how you can discover those issues, how you can analyze those issues, and also how you can, of course, solve those issues. So the case study is about a financial organization with offices in almost 50 countries. As you can imagine, this means English is not the only one language that is being used there. They have 4 official languages in this organization, which is an important thing, as you will see. And the project started as an enterprise search implementation project on Microsoft 365 because they migrated their content to Microsoft 365 and they realized, what a surprise, that out of the box search is not satisfying for the users. This is how we started. So we run every project of ours in a very similar way. So this is exactly what we have been doing with this organization as well. So first we start with scoping. And when I say scoping, that means interviews with the management, of course, but also it means surveys and workshops with the end users. We find that it is important to talk directly to the end users as well, to as many as possible, because we learn a lot from them, and you will see what kind of things we could identify and we could learn from the users during those workshops. And then we provide an implementation plan and a roadmap. We believe that search is not a one-time thing, so it's not like you implement something in a couple of months or a year and then it's done, because enterprise search is never done. There is always something to improve. So we provide a plan for our clients. And the implementation of the project itself happens in phases, in iterative phases, which means we implement something, we collect feedback from the users, and of course we add new and new features, and we collect and we use feedback from the users even during the first implementation. So this is what we have done for this organization as well, and actually we learned a lot in the first phase. So what we did there was we did interviews with the managers, we did online survey with the end users. So it was shared with all the end users, and we have received almost 300 responses. Some of them, most of them were in English, some of them were in other languages. So we had to process and normalize all those responses. And of course, we had to collect and gather the conclusions from the survey, because the survey itself was an input for our workshops that we did. We also did the workshops in 2 languages, and we did 12 workshops. Each of them were 2 hours, but it was important that we invited end users to those workshops. So not the managers, or not only the managers, and we tried to mix different types of users together to make them debate, and because we believe that this is one of the best ways to understand how they think about the content and how they use the content. And we learned a lot of interesting things from these exercises. First of all, we learned that almost everything is inconsistent. Even if they do have a structure, some structure of the content, of course, because they organize the content into SharePoint sites, into document libraries. They even use some metadata, but the use of the metadata and the use of the information architecture is inconsistent. What does it mean? It means that in some cases, they don't provide any metadata. In some cases, they require and they enter many metadata to the same type of content. In other cases, they enter metadata, but the metadata is bad and inconsistent. And just imagine that all these complexities and all these variations in 4 different languages all together, and we should provide a consistent search experience. So this is what we found to be a huge challenge there. And also we found that in many cases, it's a lack of education. The users don't know what they are expected to do. They don't know how to tag the content, they don't know how to apply the metadata, or they don't know how to search for content. So we found behaviors quite often and patterns in the user's behavior, like instead of using search, or instead of trying to use search, they, for example, save URLs to their browser favorites. And when they want to find something next time, they go through on their browser favorites one by one to see if the content that they are looking for can be found on those locations. The other pattern that we found, we call this pattern Call Stephanie. And we call it this way because there are people in the organizations, in this organization, who seem to know everything, or at least seem to know where something can be found, or not. They do have a huge list of browser favorites to search through. So if I cannot find something, and if I want to find a policy, for example, then I call Stephanie, and either she can tell me where I can find that policy, or she tells me, okay, look, you should wait for a few hours and I will be back to you. And in those few hours, she goes through on her browser favorites and tries to locate the content for me. So those are common patterns. We can see these in this organization a lot, but we can see those on other organizations as well. So we found that there is a huge gap between what they want and what they need actually, and what they do have on the content level. But to show you why do we need metadata, let me show you a couple of examples why it is important in search. So first of all, we identified that instead of one huge Google-like search page, they need different search applications, but somehow one search center. So what we identified that those search scopes or search applications are those tiles that you can see on the screen now. And of course, you need to have metadata for this because, for example, if you want to, I don't know, if you want to have a search application for corporate documents, then you have to know what is considered to be a corporate document. Or if you need to have a scope for guidelines and policies, you have to know what is a guideline and policy. Is it a content type? Is it stored in a specific location or repository, or a combination of those two, or something else? So basically, right here, we identified a gap because in some cases, there were no answer to those questions. So we need to know what content should be considered to be what. The next on the next screen, you can see that of course they want to have filters, and those filters are metadata again. So how to filter by country if we don't know which document belongs to what country? So it's again something that is super important here. Or the other thing is, of course, they want to be able to see a couple of metadata on each result. But to be able to display those metadata, we need to know those metadata. So if you don't know the country or if you don't know the project number, there is no way we can display it on the result set. So as you can see, everything on the search result set is basically metadata. But if we want to provide additional features and more advanced features like suggested searches or suggested or related documents, we have to be able to identify those patterns. What should be suggested here? How the engine should suggest documents, what the algorithm should be. And again, all of these are based on metadata. So we, in the first phase of the project, we identified that there is a huge gap between the reality and the needs and what they actually need. And we had to propose a solution and implement a solution. So first of all, we recommended to normalize the metadata, to introduce an organizational taxonomy and also to clean up the metadata what they have. With this, what we want to achieve is a controlled set of tags, and the more control we have there, then it can be the more unified. Of course, not everything can be controlled and not everything can be unified, but the goal is to unify the metadata as much as possible. Also, we have to classify the content by that metadata, and I'm going to show you in just a second that we use different levels of content for that. And if we tag and classify the content, we will be able to map the content, and we will be able to create different kinds of maps and navigation to the content. For example, those ties on the landing page of the Search Center. And of course, search can be smarter, and the discovery of the content can be also better if using a consistent and unified set of terms in an organizational taxonomy. Also, we identified that there are different levels of content because not all content should be treated the same way. So, for example, if you use Office 365, you know that in OneDrive you store your personal content, or even if you don't, most probably you have a repository where you store everything, the documents that you just create as a draft document, or that is not prepared enough to upload to the corporate repository, etc., etc. And in most cases, nobody cares about tagging here, or the technology does not provide any options to tag your documents here. And as we go up on this pyramid, what you can see is more and more governance on the content, which means more and more rules and more restrictions about how the content should be tagged and what metadata should be applied, and therefore the information quality should be better and better as we go towards to the top of this pyramid. And of course, on the top, we do have the content that is tagged and governed the best and the most. So, and of course, they do have 10 millions of documents, as you can imagine, and we had to classify all their repositories and the content and the documents to those levels of the pyramid, so we know what should be tagged on what level, and also what should be governed on what level later. So this sounds nice, but how it can be possible? Because when we have thousands of users, 10 millions of documents, it is really challenging and can be really challenging to get here. So the first option, of course, would be manual tagging. And in many cases, this is possible. In other cases, this is just simply not possible because there are too many content, or there is a legacy content and nobody knows about those documents enough anymore, or in many cases there is just not enough resources to tag everything manually. But this is still a feasible option in many cases. The other option is rule-based auto tagging, and rule-based auto tagging is one of the easiest way to auto tag the documents and to auto apply metadata on the documents. This means that based on the repository you store the document, based on the content type of the document, based on the folder structure or the library structure where you store the document, additional tags can be applied. So, for example, you can easily apply tags like country or year or those kind of tags if the information architecture is aligned with that. But of course, this cannot be used all the time, and in many cases, this is still not enough. Uh, the next option that can be used is AI and machine learning. AI and machine learning can be used in different ways in Microsoft 365, and there are more and more out of the box options with what is called the Project Cortex and SharePoint Syntax. Basically, SharePoint Syntax is a way to identify and auto tag documents if we know the structure of the document. For example, it works very well on invoices because invoices have a very similar structure. Each of those invoices have an invoice number, they have currency, they have customer or client information, VAT ID, etc., etc. So if you know how the document itself is structured, then this SharePoint syntax can be used very well. Or the other thing is you can use Azure services with text analytics and various cognitive services. Of course, this is not out of the box and it has to be custom development, but technically speaking, it is possible. And yeah, basically, if you know how to use those cognitive services and with configurations and custom development, this also can be used to extract information and tag the document with those metadata. Of course, none of those can be perfect, but when we talk about manual tagging, humans make mistakes. In a similar way, AI tagging, there's a chance that some documents will not be tagged correctly, but we found that with optimization, collecting feedback, and also content curation and metadata curation, those can be good enough to, the combination of these can be good enough to enhance and improve search, to have a better search. And also one more thing that we like to use, not only in SharePoint Online, but also in SharePoint On-Prem, is content enrichment. Out of the box, we do not have content enrichment in SharePoint Online, but using Azure services, it is absolutely possible. And what it does is we do not tag the content in the repository, in the document library, but we extract that metadata and store it in the search index as search metadata. So with that, we can enhance the search experience without tagging the content in the repository. This approach can be useful in OneDrive, for example, where we cannot tag the documents in OneDrive itself. And of course, we need content curation practices and content governance and metadata governance, taxonomy governance as well. Because as I said at the beginning, search is not a one-time project. So we believe that we have to keep it working, we have to keep it clean, and we have to keep the users happy. So we need to have not only have those curation and governance practices, but also enforce the users to follow those guidelines. And last but not least, user education is super important, both on the content side and also on search side, so that they know how to create, how to update, how to tag the content, and also they know how to use search and how to get the most out of it. So in a nutshell, this is what we found there. We found that the users have high expectations about search, as Charlie showed us a couple of e-commerce searches before, the users have really high expectations in enterprise search as well, but they just don't invest their time and effort and resources to tag the documents and to apply those metadata and to improve the information quality. So there is always a gap between which we have to work on first. This is what I wanted to show you today. If you have any questions or comments, I am always happy to answer or help, and even later, if just drop me a message or email. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Agnes.